are you, mate?
Pretty good.
Cool. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
How long's it been? 3 years?
Oh my god, has it? Yeah, it has.
Since I think it was Dave's birthday at the
yeah.
what was it called?
The Absinthe place.
Yeah.
Was it called? Absinthe place? Absinthe
I have
bar?
absolutely no fucking idea, but I remember that was the place.
Yeah. That was good. I got drunk really fast.
Yeah. We bailed. Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
I think I'd only been with Erica for maybe a month at that point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was pretty early doors. Yeah. Now we're married and
God, you guys were like proper couple then. I thought you'd been together for ages.
no, it was pretty quick. It would have been just after we did that photo shoot, wasn't it? Or
Yeah.
it was after,
Yeah,
which was the end of
after that.
16.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we met in November of 16.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and she was sort of being brought into the actors club for the first time. She's super shy.
Yeah, she's cool. I like her.
Yeah. She's pretty good. I married her and
Yeah, well, she must be pretty good then.
she's all right. She goes all right. And now she works as a photographer with me, which is pretty awesome.
Was she a photographer before?
No, never picked up a camera.
So you taught her some skills.
I taught her some skills, man. She was a planner. She was like, I fucking hate this. 9 years in. I said, why don't you just quit? Oh, I can't. Anyway, so she quit. And then she wanted to do a whole bunch of things. I said, well, while you're working that out, why don't I see if I can teach you how to be a real estate photographer with me? Super flexible.
Can you teach me how to do that? Because apparently it's good money.
It's not too bad. It's not too bad. Like, it's just enough. When it's busy, and not to go on too much of a tangent here, but when it's busy, it's good. When it's not, like the last couple of months, it's hell.
Yeah. Look, there's not much business in taking photos of actors. So
it's not a lot. It takes a lot, doesn't it? I've been here 3 years and I'm maybe at 6 a year, I would say.
Really?
Yeah.
6 gigs a year?
6. No, maybe 10 portraits for actors a year. Maybe 1 a month, I would say.
I'm complaining about getting 1 to 2 a week.
There you go. But I don't.
It's not a full-time income though. Like, it's not sustainable as well because it's seasonal and fluctuates. And,
yeah.
You know.
It'd be awesome. I always say if I had 1 shoot a week on top of what I already do, that's a huge game changer to my weekly income.
Yeah.
I don't pump it really hard. And I have a very specific style of headshots. It doesn't work for everyone. You know, it's very raw and I don't have reflectors and all this kind of stuff. It's just as is, supernatural.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's some kickbacks from that. But anyways, you've got a film coming out.
I do.
Tell me about it.
Apparition, it's called, and it's a passion project.
Yep.
It's
aren't they all these days?
Yeah, so it's not making any money. It's a passion project because we're artists. No, it's we did get funding for it on Kickstarter, so we exceeded the Kickstarter goal, which was amazing.
Hey, that's epic.
But we filmed it before the Kickstarter finished. Like the Kickstarter hadn't even reached the goal, and I paid for everything to make the film. So obviously that's like I believed in doing it to begin with, and I wanted to create it. And it came about in a really, I guess it was sort of serendipitous.
Serendipitous?
Yeah. Is that how it's pronounced? Yeah. It was the way it kind of all worked out was pretty amazing. So Phoebe Wilson-Lee, who co-stars in it with me, she's also a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd met up around the time of my birthday in November last year, and we were chatting about like, you know, we just wanted to kind of do some work, like do some acting, do some writing, just do some creating. So we're both kind of itching a little bit.
Do something.
Yeah, and get some footage. And we thought, oh, well, maybe we should just like, you know, help each other film some show reels or like do some scenes or something. And it was kind of like, well, why don't we just make a film? And I said to her, I've got a few ideas bouncing around in my head, leave it with me. And now some freaky stuff happened. There was one, I've got a housemate, and she like at the time she wasn't home, she was away a lot, and I you know, I'd spent a lot of nights alone, and I was alone this one night and I heard this crash sound, and I was like, what's that? And I got up and I was like, had my phone, I was like, I'm gonna call the police, somebody breaking in. I was like freaking out, and I opened my bedroom door and looked out into the lounge room, and there's this big painting above my couch, and it had fallen onto the ground. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. Just some ghosts saying hello. went back to bed, and it's like 3 a.m. at this point, and 15 minutes later, I heard another crash in the bathroom. And I went in there and a whole bunch of stuff had fallen down. I was like, okay, it's hot. It's a hot night. Things are slippery and falling off, shelves and walls. It's nothing. I couldn't get to sleep. I sat there with the light on, and I started writing and came up with this idea, I guess, based around, apparition. It sort of means ghost. It's this sort of thing that's there but not there. And the script that I initially wrote, I wrote it in a few hours. So I stayed awake all night that night. The next day I was at this sort of like personal development seminar with a friend, and I was like, I had like 4 coffees, just like, yeah, I've written this script and I'm really excited. I'm gonna
super jacked.
Oh my God, it's like it just happened. It flowed through me. It came from somewhere else, and I'm gonna make it into a film. And she's like, that's great, but you need to calm down.
Yeah, chill, man. How many pages? What is it about?
So I I redrafted it a few times, and Phoebe and I sort of had a few meetings, and we got a crew together, a very small crew, and went and filmed it. So
how quickly between writing and filming?
Well, we filmed it in I think it was the 14th and 15th of December. So
And
my
it was
birthday was the
November.
14th of November. So it was like
That's quick.
the week after my birthday. So it was less than a month between like we should make a film and we're on set making a film. It happened really, really fast. And
That's pretty awesome, and that's a testament to the content as well.
yeah, I
You
mean,
know?
it's pretty great that so I wrote this thing and I felt like, well, it feels like it works, but when you write something, you don't know how it flows, and someone reads it and it's like, does it work? Do you think it's okay? Like, do you get what it means? Do you get like the story behind it? Does the twist make sense to you?
Yeah,
like,
are you just doing this? Yeah.
Is it just like a bunch of words that's like you slap them together and you call it art? Like, yeah, there was a bit of that in my mind going like, God, I hope this actually makes sense to people when they read it or watch it. And, the people who were involved were like, yeah, like I wouldn't want to work on it if I didn't feel like there was something here. So I hope that's, the case when it's finished
You would hope,
as well.
and that's the best way to answer that question too. Like, I literally wouldn't be here if I wasn't into this,
Yeah.
And that's a great way to just sort of set up a lot of artistic endeavors. Just do the things you want to do. You'll always be behind them. And even if years later they weren't what you're into now, they were the great and the right decision at the time. And it's a really good way to navigate and find your own style too. I when I was first starting out as a photographer, I watched a great interview with Russell James, and he's from Perth, and he was like a cop, and then he worked in a factory. Long story short, now he's like the #1 photographer for Victoria's Secret, right? And he didn't get his break till like late 30s, the whole bit. And they were talking to him about defining your style, and he said the way that I did it and still do it is once I get all the stills and I'm flicking through them like that, it's the ones that would stop me if I was watching reading a magazine.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you keep doing that and you've got this body of work. People go, oh, your style is this. And you're like, oh, shit. Yeah, it really, really is. Yeah. It's the same with, this with playing music. There's these certain chords that you gravitate towards a lot. And they just...
Minor.
Right? Exactly. A minor and E minor for me. Massive chords. And B minor... and you can hear it, and you wonder why when you start learning too, like your favorite songs, and then you start to learn them, and you see these same chords appearing over and over and over, and the same sort of pentatonic scales and what have you. And I think that's really, really cool. So it's a long-winded way of agreeing with what your crew was saying to you.
Yeah. Well,
so that's great. So you shot it. You're what, days away from finishing your post-production?
Yeah, so I'm editing. I mean, it took me a while to really get stuck into editing. Obviously, because we filmed it last year in December, and it's now September the following year. And I was like, yeah, it'll be finished by March. And
I said the exact same thing.
I think everyone does. It's like, wow, that was
we'll
so
smash
ambitious.
We'll smash it.
I'm like, I'm gonna get it into all the film festivals at the end of February. Like, oh no.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, no, I was feeling ambitious. I was very motivated at the time, and I had a plan of action. What I did not anticipate, and because of the content, the subject matter of the film that I'd written into it, based around my personal experiences and some other things that came up in my life around that time, I didn't expect to get triggered while I was working on editing it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so from a mental health perspective, I've written this film as part of my personal
Mm-hmm.
therapy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a true story in any way. Like, it's about two sisters. They're going through grief themselves. It's not said in the film, but it's very subtly implied that their parents are no longer there,
Mm-hmm.
and their parents have passed away, and they're in this farmhouse, and sort of tensions start rising, and there's a twist that sort of happens, but it's like I can't tell you anything.
Yeah, it's really hard to give the story on a short story without giving the whole thing
Yeah, because
away.
it's so short and
Yeah.
it's so to the point. It's really fast, and it's I mean, if it was a feature film, there'd be like, I've got an idea of what would go into that if that were to eventuate.
Do you think you will go that way?
If the funding was there? I mean, like, if it does work out to be something that sort of is a beautiful piece of art and people enjoy it and it gets picked up at festivals, or I win, prizes for it or something, there's momentum happening. Or if, government sort of film funding bodies want to get involved and help with that as well. Like, I will sort of apply for things and see
You will
where it
use that
goes.
as a proof of concept?
Yeah, proof of concept. And also a proof of work, because I've got other ideas that I want to sort of put into action.
And that really helps.
Yeah, to have something that's like, look what I made. It worked. It did things. People liked it.
Yeah. And I took it from
watchable.
here to here to here the whole way.
Yeah,
and completed
exactly.
This thing.
Yeah. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
the triggering thing was that was really interesting and really eye-opening. And I think that's something I'll keep in mind in the future when writing from a very personal place of personal experiences to do with grief and loss, because I've had a lot of that in my past. But when I started editing, seeing yourself on camera as an actor, like, that's already triggering. It's like,
right.
that's how I look. I don't know if I like that scene, but like that, I think that tells a story, but I don't like how I look in it. But like, that's the best version of that shot to tell the story
that I've got.
God damn it. So there was a little bit of that going on, and
just like an insecurity thing.
Yeah.
And
it's like I needed to go. Okay, I need to sit over here with myself and have a good talk to myself and be like, dude, this is, like, you're telling a story.
How do I be objective?
Yeah. Really, really objective. And I had a chat to Phoebe about that as well, and because she's made short films that she's been in as well, and she's had the same experience. And it's like it's a common thing if you're a filmmaker and an actor and you put yourself in your film. So if you want to act in your own film, you've got to be really aware of that. That you might, like, if you're editing it as well. If someone else is editing it, I'd be like, okay. But then
you're not in the room watching it unfold and seeing the outtakes and the bad ones and the good ones, and you're like, oh yeah, but
which one? That was the one. My hair looks better in that one.
You're not serving the story. Sometimes it's
exactly. It's all about the story, and you really have to kind of step back and step away from yourself and how you feel about yourself to achieve that and really service the story. So yeah, that was a big part of it. And I had some health issues early in the year that I had to focus on, and basically, other projects came up and things came up that I had to work on, and suddenly it's September, and I've almost finished editing, so it's nearly there.
That's awesome. So when you say nearly finished, is there like just a revision process now, or you've got it all intact, or are you still playing with the rhythm of a section? Or?
I've been sort of editing it chronologically, so from the start to finish. And there's about
as the script reads.
Yeah. So there's about 2 scenes left to edit. 2.5 scenes, yeah. Left to like kind of add into the edit. So the edit's all there. Everything's where it should be in the stream in Adobe Premiere. And I've also been teaching myself about LUTs and like color grading. So I was going to
What do you use to grade on Premiere as well?
Yeah, on Premiere.
Yeah.
So I was going to get somebody else to color grade, and I thought, well, you know what, this is a really great opportunity for me to learn how to do this, because I might not do it in the future, but I want to know how it works so that I'm not kind of, that way when I'm on set, if I'm making another film, I know what to do with the lighting. I know what to do with, the colors in the background of the image and the shots and working with other things. So if I'm color grading later and I want it to have this kind of colder look, then I'm going to use certain colors in the scene, or I'm going to use certain lighting in the scene to achieve that prior to adding color grading. Because you can kind of do that a little bit.
100%.
Rely on putting a look over the film to make it look that way. So
I think, we were talking about this morning, another actor and I, just about how now in this world, all the technology and everything can lend itself to laziness. And it's like, oh, we'll just fix it in post. We'll just fix it in post. Get it right now. And the other thing about what you're talking about as well, which is really, really great, is learning the language and knowing how it's done so that when you are outsourcing to someone, maybe it isn't a friend who's color grading. Maybe you are having to go to a stranger and they're doing you a good deal or whatever it might be, but you can say to them, this is how I want it. And when they come back to you maybe and they're like, oh, I think this is better because we can't quite, you can go, well, why don't you try this, 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 and this? All of a sudden you're empowered by a little bit of knowledge that you have about that program. Because I experienced it, and you probably experienced yourself as a photographer when someone else is doing photography for you and they're like, whatever, you can work together a lot better because you know what they know. You know what I mean? Same with editing, even just the little bit that I've learned about editing. And when you might be doing a student project or something like that, you can see what's happening around you and go, you're going to struggle to stitch that together if you take that shot from here. Or on the flip side, man, I love what you're about to do here because I know how this is going to unfold and it's really, really cool. And I think it's super helpful. I know sometimes young filmmakers, everyone's trying to be the man. And I mean that in the best way. We've got to jack ourselves up to do this incredible thing. And so you walk onto your set of your short film or what have you, and you don't want to listen because it can become convoluted and you can lose your way. But at the same time, if you're doing a film and you're a younger filmmaker or what have you, and you have some older educated actors on there, it can be a really great spot to learn from each other. Like for me, I don't know so much about shooting moving pictures. So I'm like asking heaps of questions and I'm like, oh, what about this? What about this? And then you get this real divide of people who are like, oh, awesome. And the others like, shut up.
Yeah, you're an actor.
Yeah,
go back and sit over there.
You're fucking with my idea here, man.
Yeah.
I was really lucky last year to work on a film called Stringy Bark, in which I got to play Ned Kelly. And that was an amazing, amazing experience with two 20-year-old filmmakers who haven't even finished RMIT and VCA. Like they're still in their final year and they're doing this side project which isn't connected. And they were so good at me going like, just like ripping apart the script to make sure, because a lot of the dialogue that they put in there was quotes from old transcripts from Once Upon a Time. And I'm like, that may be a quote from that transcript, but grammatically this isn't going to fly. And when you put that into a close-up, it's going to be like, is that a fuck up?
Yeah.
So they were really good at going, oh yeah, and then us tweaking it to let it roll off the tongue better, and then even just the action and working and they were great, and I'd had experiences where they just didn't want to hear about it. We're going to do it like this. So it's good if you can learn, like we are, about all of the different stuff. I think it makes you a better actor.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely. Because then you get it. You're sitting there, you're like, I don't understand what's going on in the scene. If you know what they're trying to, like, if you're working on a big production and you know exactly what they're trying to achieve by what's going on, you're like, oh, okay, so they've got this color lighting over here. I reckon it must obviously be they're doing this sort of look. And it's the stuff that you don't always get told as an actor. Like you got the script, you've got the character description, you go and do the work, you find out about who you're playing, what this character is, and you do all of that. But you don't necessarily know about how they want the film to look. And that plays a big part. It plays a huge part. That aesthetic of how the audience sees it visually can really change the mood of a film. And if you know by the setup of the set and the art department, where everything's going and, the color, the lighting, the way the lighting is, and you get on set and you think, oh, this is a romantic scene. And then you realize they've got this really sort of obscure, dim, dark lighting. You're like, oh, this is like edgy. Like I didn't see it that way in the script and in the character. Like the director obviously has a different imagery sort of idea about it. And when you know about those technical things, it helps to inform your performance. Like, okay, so I'm going to do what I'm going to do, but I know what they're trying to achieve as well. So I can kind of play ball with that and tweak what I was doing and make it more to their aesthetic or, if needed.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. They'll love you for it and then they'll hate you for it when it doesn't. So
Yeah.
But it is true. It does make you a much better actor, and you can really gel with it, and it also helps with your own planning going in. If you even like, I'll always ask for what's your shot list and your flow, so I can plan my emotional beats beforehand as well. And sometimes they'll be like, you just get there and we'll just take it from there. Oh man, it's gonna really help.
Well, you're more technically minded, so it's interesting how we're all different like that. And some actors are like, "I'm method. Don't pull me out of character. There is no camera here. I am in this place of whatever this character's doing." And then other actors are like, "So, like, what's the frame? What's
Yeah,
what's
am
the
I here?
whole
Am I here? Where am I?
lighting aspect?
Yeah.
Like, where's the mic going to be? Where should I direct my face for the right sound? There's all of that as well. And then there's other actors who are like, I want to play with this scene and do whatever. You guys do your job and work your thing around me, and it's they're
Then
all
it's
sort
up
of
to the other guys to just evolve, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah. All of them work in different ways for different performances and different different people. So I don't think there's any wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an asshole, that's the wrong way.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only wrong way.
That's it. Hey, you can be any kind of different personality. Just don't be a prick.
Yeah.
Just get along. I recently did 3 months at PEM school in Melbourne, Perda Camp Emotional Method.
Oh.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
You should check it out. They do some really great taster courses, and then like a Saturday or a 3-day thing, and then
What do you do there?
So it's an acting method, which is completely biological. So, for example, the liver is the organ that activates when you're angry. So there's a physiological response.
Yeah.
So you do through a sort of meditative technique, you can just consciously connect and activate your liver to send that sort of anger chemical through your body. And what does my face do when I'm angry? And you do all these techniques that connect to your organs that activate despair, happiness, anger, so on and so on. And it's on tap constantly. So you don't ever have to go down into this dark hole of whatever. And
you don't have to access your own memories of trauma to
none. There's no memory work at all. It is purely physiological. It's quite fascinating, and it certainly dials into a lot of the sort of health and lifestyle stuff that I've adopted and researched, in meditation and coherence and all this kind of stuff. And I forget why I started down this tangent. What was the last thing that we spoke about? Why I'm telling you about PEM? But they, that's right. So one of the things that they do is they teach their crew some of these methods. So if you've got a really deep, whatever the scene may be, everyone is channeling the same thing in the room. Right. So if it's a really happy scene, they'll use what's called a heart open technique. So you sort of expand your chest and your eyes open up like this, and you imagine this expanding, your heart opening, and there's this like fuzziness on your ears, and it's just this whole thing. So everyone, the sound guy, the director, the grip, the whole bit, they're all doing the same technique. And because energy is entanglement, right? So we emit an emotion. Emotions are particles, and they intertwine with the people around us.
You will feel it, yeah.
That's why if you're really pumped and you walk into a wake, you're going to be pretty sad pretty quick. Everyone's channeling a certain energy. So they talk about that, and they teach their whole PEM trained crews, and because it can be really tricky when you're trying to get the tears out and the whole bit, and it's really dark, and you've got this sound guy who's cracking jokes with the grip and is not in that frame of mind. He's just getting his hourly rate and wants to get the fuck
if your
out
eye
of there.
line passes that when you're in character, it can be very, very distracting.
Super distracting. Yeah. And that's the other great thing about PEM is it doesn't matter then too if it is distracting, because it's just physiology. You just go, cool, bam, and you reconnect. And then you do a wash-off technique. So even if it was and you were bawling your eyes out in the whole bit, you just do this like expelling technique. It's gone. You're ready to go.
Yep.
And even if the whole class for 4 hours was tears, you walk out beaming. Yeah. And it's really, really, really progressive, and I highly recommend it to anyone. Yeah.
No,
it's
definitely.
only one school in Melbourne.
definitely look that up for
You
sure.
should
Yeah.
definitely check them out. So, what was the catalyst for when you decided I'm going to have to take matters into my own hands? I'm going to have to write. I'm going to have to make my own projects, and not just self tapes or not just a little clip, a whole thing. How long has that been happening?
I guess in the music industry, I've always been self-managed artist, and like I haven't done a lot with music. I mean, I've done a couple of little mini tours and put out an EP, and it was more sort of for personal reasons that I wanted to do that. It wasn't really like, I'm going to put this out, I'm going to tour the world, I'm going to be on the radio. It was just like, I just want my music to kind of be out there so I can perform it and people can listen to it if they want to. It was never, massive goals with that. But I had studied business management, creative business management, and had kind of taken control of my own career in that regard. And with the film thing, I was sort of kind of looking at the film industry in a different way. And I was thinking kind of like, you've got to have a great agent. You've got to be really well connected. All the casting directors need to know who you are. And you've got to like kind of maintain all of these relationships. And I think I got to a point where I knew, I know a lot of the casting directors in Australia, like if not all of them, they might not all know me, but I know who they are. And I kind of check in and update and let them know what I'm doing. And I went for a while there without an agent and sort of focused on, personal projects, personal development, therapy, kind of getting myself in order. I spent a couple of months in LA training over there and, meeting casting directors and agents and managers and seeing how it all works and kind of taking away the illusion of like, oh, you have to get chosen. And I went there to really sort of give myself this stark look and like, face it. And I got what I went there for. It was a bit of a slap in the face, not in like an unexpected way, but the industry is beautiful and creative and wonderful, and LA is the same. But if you're not, how do I put this? I guess you've got one aspect where if you look like this aesthetic perfection of being like a model or really interesting and unique and having like this charisma and natural skill, then people will notice you. You'll have agents coming to you. You'll have managers. If you're young, on top of that, even better. But if you're kind of in the normal looking category of regular people, like whenever I get casting briefs, I usually get put up for things that are like everyday girl, everyday woman who's attractive or like relatable but attractive. It's like the best friend, or I'm not like a leading lady kind of actress. So and I've known that for a long time. So I sort of thought, well, within that, how do I create a career in this industry or create work and fulfillment in this industry and not feel like crap and not feel like I'm not good enough or I could never be that, like what everybody's kind of looking for, what all the agents and managers and casting directors are looking for to be in those lead roles, to be in those amazing shows. And if my skill isn't like exceptional as an actor, if I'm like a good actor, and I can do good things, but I'm not like this ridiculous improv talent.
Right.
Like how do I fit myself in? How do I get noticed? How do I get work? And it really came down to, well, I just need to create the work I want to do.
Yeah, around my skill set so that then they can see me in that best light.
Yeah, and I mean, part of it was like so they can see me, so then I get noticed. And it sort of started shifting to, oh, well, hang on a second. If I can create work and then create finance for that work, do I need they to see me? When I'm just make my own work and I can make work for other people as well. So it's really taking control and going, well, I don't want to have to wait for people to tell me that I'm ready to be something when 100%. Like I just want to be doing something. So I'm going to do it. And then if people want to jump on board, they're going to come and get to do stuff with me and get paid to do it and be part of something great that they can express themselves through rather than sitting around and waiting to be accepted.
The worst thing you can do these days, 100%. And the other thing with that, and I don't love social media, but if you can't beat them, join
Join
them.
'em.
And it seems to be the go. Hence the podcast, hence the channel, all of the bit.
Yeah.
But I will say this: is it gives you an incredible place to create your own content, and unfortunately, that also creates an avenue for a ton of shit. But if you are creating good content and you are proactive with spreading the news about that, you can build this following, and all of a sudden they have to listen because 700,000 people are already listening or whatever, and they like what you have to say. So that's bankable,
Yeah.
you know, and then then they will come to you and say, what else are you thinking about? We would like you to do your thing, you know, a bit like, I forget her name, but she's got Fleabag.
Oh,
Have you been
yeah.
watching the show?
No, yeah, but I know what you're talking about.
I mean, she was a stage actress and what have you, and an improv and comedian and stuff like that, as far as I'm aware. And she had a little spot on a show that, as far as I know, only did one season. But she built up enough of a, I don't want to say following because I don't feel like she's a social media kind of girl, and I really am sort of stepping out here on my knowledge of this actress. But my understanding is that they saw enough of the bizarre thing that she was doing, and she got enough interest that they just went, and then she said, I'm going to write this show and I'm going to pitch it exactly how I want it to be. And it's massive and it's awesome. And it's so not what everyone else was doing, you know, and that will be a game changer. You know, I don't want to say more than that in terms of stepping out about what her agenda is with it, because we all take our own things. But, you know, she's doing the lot as a female actress she's quite quirky and doesn't fit the standard bill and all the rest of it. And she's going, fuck yes, this is really interesting. This is really funny. And it's super it's super unorthodox and it's a success. So I think that's really, really interesting. And
we're seeing a lot more of that. And it's funny because I like to think of the situation as being, you know, population is going up. That's a good and bad thing. Bad for the environment and the planet and the future of humanity, but really good for industries. So in terms of having more of a market, it's not just what's popular anymore that people want. Like, there are enough people who want something different. There are enough older people who want content that relates to them, and there are enough younger people who want the same. So it doesn't really matter. Like, we're not going to pass an expiration date by growing older, and you know, we can,
as an actor,
as an actor, as a creative, full stop, in any part of the industry. And like, for me, the way I see it, maybe it's my vision, maybe I'm an idealist, but I think I am a little bit. I'm trying to be a realist, you know, in the past few years.
I think you should keep with the optimism, man.
Yeah, look, I've always been optimistic, and I think that's the way to go for me, because if you go down the dark path, you do not come back.
Yeah,
and that can go on and on. But, you know, being optimistic and seeing the possibility and seeing that we can, if we're creating our own work, and we've got these platforms that are sustaining that are, you know, helping that, like, you know, streaming platforms that basically you can be an out of nowhere filmmaker and get onto that sort of thing. And there are a lot of people who are like, yeah, but you still need to know people, and no. And it's like, well, if you have that attitude, it's never going to work for you then, is it?
Yeah, if you're already sort of planning to fail. There's a great, I don't know if, I guess I don't want to say quote, but like a YouTube video of Tony Robbins talking about studies that were done on optimists versus realists.
I love Tony.
Yeah, Tony's the man.
Yeah.
And this, I forget who the study was done by and when and where and all of that, but basically the premise is that they sort of set up a group of however many thousands of people who were optimistic about their goals and extreme goals, and how many of them were realists. And the optimists failed like 90% more than the realists, because the realists never set their goals that high, but they always got very close to it. But they never had the same kind of success the optimists had. I know which side of that coin I would rather be on.
Shoot for the stars.
You know what I mean?
Land 100%. In the clouds.
I mean, this is one of the things. Quote. Yeah, is hard with the business side of this. Is I had an agent years ago who was a realist, you know, and it was like numbers, throw as many people at it, and statistically one of them's going to stick, and that's about as much of an involvement as going to be. And I asked her questions about LA and getting a manager, and she's like, never going to happen. You don't have an O1. You're never going to get one. Just forget about it. And I was like, I just think you're in the wrong game, sweetheart. Like, your bread and butter, your product is optimists
Yeah.
who step out to face like incredible odds. You've got to get on their side just a little bit.
Actors are you know the tarot, like tarot cards, the card the Fool.
I don't know the names, but
there's a card in the tarot called the Fool, and it's like this guy, and he's like kind of skipping up a cliff, about to jump off the edge, and it's like woo, and it's the first card of the major arcana in the tarot, and you know what it basically represents is this like, well, you know, you kind of
hope for the best.
leaping, yeah, you leap and the net will appear, and I think that every actor is the fool in that aspect, that because you know work is seasonal, we don't know where the next job is coming from. Having to kind of have this blind optimism, like I'm going to skip off the edge of the cliff and we'll see what happens. If you don't have that attitude, if you're like, I'm just going to stand back from the edge of the cliff and like wait for like, you know, somebody to build a bridge for me.
Yeah.
Nothing is ever going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
You know, 100%. So you've got to have a little bit of that blind optimism. And it's, you know, it's good to be a realist in some aspects, because I mean, if you're naive and you have blind optimism, you're going to get rolled.
Yeah.
Life is going to...
Yeah, it's going to be shit.
Yeah.
You have to be really realist about the business side of things.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And like people's agendas and the fact that, you know, there are a lot of amazing, supportive, creative people, but then there are people who try and cash in on that or try and get something personal out of that in some way or another, whatever that is. And being aware of those people and knowing how to sort of recognize them, navigate, you know, not be around them and kind of go, oh, yep, you're one of them. Cool. I'll avoid that. Back to the positive and, you know, the creatives who are doing stuff and being empowered. So just making sure that you're making the right choices with the people you're around as well, I think is really important.
And it takes time to learn that too.
Yeah.
You know,
sometimes you learn the hard way.
Yeah. And you got to take some pretty hectic hits. I mean, I had a recent experience, which I won't dive into too much because it's still ongoing, but and I want to make sure that it all just does its thing and I get what I want before I start spilling the beans on it. But just different creative conflicts in independent, no money projects where contracts really don't mean a lot. Do you know what I mean? They can be there, but if there's no money involved and no, like, he said, she said, whatever. So you have to be really, that's a really hard part to navigate when everyone's chipping in time and what have you. You mentioned before about, you know, all these people investing their time. Well, there's another thing that you have to navigate is the other life that pays for them to be there. And then all of a sudden you might have your whole team lined up to go and shoot this thing. And then the middle of it, someone's like, oh, I just booked a $30,000 job, I got to go. And they have to go. You would go too, you know? Yeah. And it's so, you know, I had a recent, like I say, this recent experience where we came out the other side of it. And then there was 3 different directions they wanted to take post. So navigating that without contracts, without money, without, you know, like, you've been paid to do this. That's where your part ends. And that's one of the good things about once you get into the other side of it and you're not just making your small projects anymore, that everyone knows their place and there's contracts and everyone's protected and there's insurance.
That's where having skills as a producer comes in handy.
Yes.
And a wrangler.
Yep, that's right. And so I was producer on this thing and that's something I've learned. I had contracts in place and everything that I thought was, but it's still, when those contracts don't mean much because there's no money involved, people can just walk away. Yeah,
they can. And I think that's why working with the right people. There were a couple of people I approached for my short film, Apparition, and there were a few people I approached for filming it, a couple of like small production companies, and asked them about like rates and, you know, availability and that sort of thing. And out of those, I mean, one of them had all these sort of rules that they wanted to kind of run with. And I was like, well, I get what you're saying, maybe for a bigger project,
Mm.
to them it was like it was dollar signs. So they would have been paying them to do it, and it was kind of like, well, you guys can come on board. I'll pay you to do it, and we'll get this great product, and I don't have to worry too much about anything, because you'll do it the way I want you to do it. But it was very heartless, like it, not heartless. Like I'm sure they're great at what they do, but it was very business, and it wasn't like I felt like I'm like, did you read the script? Like, Drew? I don't know if you read the script, like because they were saying all these things. I'm like, we don't need to do that. If you read the script, you'd realize that that's not necessary. And so I sort of thought, like, to me, it's like if you're on board for the right reasons, having a contract or not, and having people pull out, like, well, fingers crossed, they're not going to, unless they do. And like that, they do get a good job and they have to kind of bail, and you've got to find somebody else to replace them or whatever. That's, definitely there. I think I'm just a believer in things happen for a reason.
Right.
Like the stars aligned for me to create this film. And another thing, the painting fell off the wall the night that I wrote the script. The day after I finished shooting the film, there's this bouquet of flowers that we used on set, and I was sort of rearranging them. They're like dried flowers, and I was rearranging them on my balcony because I was going to put them. They're sitting in my lounge room right now. I've got the flowers there. They're beautiful. But I was sort of rearranging the bouquet on my balcony because they were making a mess. There was flowers everywhere. And I was sitting there and I was talking to my housemate, and suddenly, my lounge room is like the couch, the TV. The painting above the couch is what fell down that night. The painting above the TV fell down in that moment when I'm sitting there. And we looked at each other because she knew about the whole story, and we just started laughing. And I was like, what? Like, can that be any stronger a sign? And it's like this bookend, like this painting fell down prior to making the film and writing the script, and the other painting fell down once it was completed. It's kind of like, well, that's for me a sign from the universe to be like, this is,
you're on path.
You're on path. And I think that's, I've always had a bit of an understanding of, or a belief in, and faith in sort of spiritual synchronicities and little signs and messages. And that was that for me. So it just, I think that if you live with a little bit of magic in life, even when bad things happen and contracts fall through and people can't be part of something, maybe they weren't meant to.
100%.
Maybe it was meant to happen in a different way. And even if you don't believe in meant to be and you don't believe in some sort of greater power, finding the happiness in every moment is going to make you feel a lot better about life anyway, regardless of whether the magic is real or not.
Yeah. And you have to have that in this industry, like, especially when like we talk about, and a lot of people that I talk with, and I'm sure every other Australian filmmaker that I talk with as I go along this podcast will be aware of just the extra amount of grind here in Australia. And when you're not in one of the major filmmaking epicenters of the world, is, man, if you don't have that, you're either going to shoot yourself or you're just going to stop doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's brutal. And you have like, I was in New York a few years back when I first decided I wanted to be an actor, and I was signed by an agency right out of the gate. Like, I literally, the first day I walked out onto the street in New York, got an email, come in, got signed. I was auditioning by the end of the week. And I auditioned about 3-4 times a week. And albeit it was for TVCs because I had no acting training at that point, the odd thing was for film, and I ended up doing 2 parts and on a short film and on a TV show. But I came home and I was like, oh yeah, cool. So it's not the same. It's like one audition every 3 months.
Yeah, momentum really drops off in Australia, doesn't it?
So you're like, there's a lot of time in between.
Yeah.
You were talking about serendipity of events and what have you before. I have a table read here tomorrow for a feature film that I've just written, which is sort of one of the motivators for the podcast, is to try and build an audience around this film that I'm nutting out into the 5th draft and what have you. So I've got this whole big group of actors coming around tomorrow who are doing it. Half of them don't know me, and they're doing it just because they've read the script and are trying to, like, act as often as you can.
Yeah, being part of something.
Being a part of something, come network. But so I was talking to the director of Stringy Bark to get his dad, who played a character in the film and helped write Stringy Bark, to come along and read. And he said one of the characters in the film is an SAS soldier, and his name's Christopher Ryan. he said, did you base that guy off the SAS soldier Christopher Ryan? And I was like, I've never heard of this guy. So there's this guy called, I forget his first name, but his last name is Park. The film was called The Park. And his pseudonym is Christopher Ryan, which is my lead character. And he was an SAS, Australian SAS soldier. And the pseudonym, I think, and I could be totally wrong.
Psychic channeling through your writing there.
is the pseudonym to cover the stories that he's telling about what went down. And my character is a guy who becomes disillusioned with the bureaucracy and the lies and all the rest of it and pulls out of the SAS and finds himself in the Kruger National Park working for an anti-poaching unit. And there's another name in there. So my lead actress's name. Oh, that's right. His there was another connection and I forget, but it was like another character in there that's connected to this guy's last name was Armstrong, which is the last name. Oh, that's right. Okay, so the woman who's coming to read tomorrow is from South Africa, and she has just done no connection whatsoever. She has just narrated a book about the big evil in my film. So everything in my film is based on real people, but is fictionalized. But there is a real guy 10 years ago, 12 years ago, Asian sort of politician who came out publicly and claimed that he had cured his cancer with rhino horn. And in my research, I've heard people talk about him, but no one's ever, from what I've been able to find, said his name or who this guy is. This woman who's coming tomorrow, who just responded, who a friend connected to her to a post on Facebook, just narrated a book about this guy, and from a guy whose last name is Armstrong. I think it's the other way around. The SAS soldier's last name is Armstrong. This guy who narrated the book's last name is Park, and she narrated this book about this character, the real person, and his involvement in the rise in rhino horn death.
So there's all the synchronicities and lining up.
So and they all seem trivial, but just I always think that there's something in that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always noticed this sort of stuff in life. It's funny. I remember when I was sort of working out, I started seeing a psychologist because I had anxiety, and my doctor gave me this sheet to fill out. It was a questionnaire. I think it was about bipolar disorder or something, and it was one of the questions was, do you see reoccurring coincidences or something? And I was like, all these questions relate to spiritual people. Are you saying all spiritual people have mental health problems? And he just sort of shrugged, and I was like, okay.
Well, I need to find another therapist.
But I've always recognized synchronicities, and I've always noticed it in the entertainment industry. One in particular that pops into my head right now is Jason Momoa, who was one of the main characters on Stargate Atlantis, which is massive Stargate
Was
fan.
he?
Yes.
Like back in the day?
Yes.
I did not know
Ronan.
that.
His character's name was Ronan.
You mean like with MacGyver and everything?
Oh, that was SG-1.
Oh, okay.
So SG-1 was like 10 seasons.
Right.
And that was based on Earth.
Yeah, okay.
Stargate Atlantis was on the planet Atlantis, which was like the mythic Atlantis connected to Earth.
And Momoa was in that.
Momoa was one of the main characters in that. And his character's name was Ronan. He then went on to do Conan, right? Right. And then he went on to be Aquaman of Atlantis.
All right.
So like, and you see this kind of, I can't think of anybody else at the moment, but like actors will often get cast in. It's not just typecasting though. It's kind of like, that's weird. That actor has played a character with the same name 7 times or something like that.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting.
And I see that in people, but I myself am attracted to synchronistic circumstances. So if I am kind of looking for wine, if I'm in the bottle shop and I don't know what, I want to try a new wine. Like I love a Shiraz, and I'll be looking at the labels and I'm like, oh, that one's got a skeleton leaf on it, which is one of my magic symbols. I'm going to buy that one and it's going to be good because it's a message. That's pretty extreme. It's not always that extreme, but occasionally.
But you got it. I don't know. I'm all for that in just finding those, like you say, synchronicities.
You got to make life magic somehow.
Yeah, I agree. On that note, thank you very much for coming down, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Good talk.
Yeah, it was a good talk.
Cheers.